Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here again, digging into the complex stuff, sorting through stacks of sources, all to give you the insights you need for, well, smarter and safer travels.
That's right.
And today, we're putting on, let's say, our metaphorical straw hats. We're diving deep into a place many dream about, but one that's got some serious financial and logistical layers. Cancun and the whole Riviera Maya.
Exactly. Our goal today isn't just about the pretty pictures. We want to, tear through that glossy marketing, get right down to the essential truths of planning a trip there.
So what were we looking at source-wise?
We've pulled together material covering Cancun's, frankly, astonishing origin story, how it was basically built from nothing.
Yeah.
Then, really critical money-saving tips, like the actual math on why using US dollars can cost you daily.
Okay.
Detailed cost breakdowns, too, what things really cost. And, very importantly, the security situation, drawing from official government warnings and actual reports from people who've been there recently.
Right. We're aiming for that essential knowledge. The stuff that makes the difference between, say, a nice but kind of pricey holiday and one where you feel informed, maybe have a richer, more authentic time, and crucially, stay safer.
Yeah, think of this as your shortcut. For you, the informed traveler, this is about building confidence before you even step on the plane. Because let's face it, this region is known for paradise, sure, but also its fair share of pitfalls.
So the big question we're tackling for you, the listener, maybe planning this trip right now is what?
It's really this. How do you make the most of that famous hotel zone, the convenient part, but also feel confident enough to step outside that bubble, explore the real Yucatan, and do it all without falling into those common money traps or, worse, compromising your safety?
Okay, let's unpack this calculated paradise.
Yeah.
Where do we start? That origin story sounds fascinating.
It really is, because you see Cancun now, this massive glittering strip of resorts, and you just assume it, grew over time, like other famous beach towns.
Like Acapulco or Miami, maybe?
Exactly. But no, that's completely wrong. Cancun was basically invented, built from scratch. It was a deliberate government strategy.
So paint a picture for us. Before 1970, before the bulldozers showed up, what was actually there?
It's almost hard to imagine now. We're talking late 1960s. The area was just this unknown stretch of coast in Quintana Roo, very sparsely populated, maybe only about 100 people living in the whole region.
Wow, 100 people.
Yeah. Geographically, think sand dunes, huge swamps, thick mangrove forests, and dense jungle. It was apparently quite famous for its snakes.
Lovely.
Right. It was, frankly, a poor, isolated part of Mexico. Nothing like what you see today.
So how does that become a global destination, a multi-billion-dollar industry? You said it wasn't an accident?
Not at all. Pure economic engineering. The Mexican government, through a specific tourism development fund called Fonatur, decided they needed a major world-class resort to boost the whole national economy.
But they didn't just, pick a spot on a map.
No. They got serious. They used statistical analysis, even computer models back then. They were looking for the ideal location.
What kind of data were they crunching?
They compared potential sites against successful resorts, Miami Beach, Acapulco, places like that, looking at things like year-round weather patterns, rainfall, hurricane risk.
Okay, makes sense.
The quality of the beaches, how close it was to major airports, potential tourist numbers, and Cancun basically ticked all the right boxes.
What were the main selling points, according to the computers?
Well, number one, optimal, consistent weather pretty much year-round. Two, those incredible white sand beaches, very distinctive. And three, this was crucial, its proximity to major Mayan archaeological sites.
Chichen Itza, Tulum.
Exactly. They weren't just selling sun and sand, they were selling access to ancient history right next door. That was a calculated part of the package.
Clever. Was there another factor?
Yes, and it was a big one from a planning perspective. The area had very high poverty and almost no existing industry.
So easier to develop.
Much easier. They didn't have to deal with established businesses or dismantle an existing economy to buy up the land and start building. It was essentially a blank slate for them.
And once they picked the spot, the speed of development, it's pretty wild.
It's staggering. Construction crews arrived in January 1970. The very first hotel opened its doors in September 1974. Think about that.
Just over 4 years from jungle to hotel.
And the growth after that was explosive. The Fonatur model worked maybe too well. Within just 1 year of that first hotel opening, Cancun welcomed 100,000 tourists.
Incredible numbers.
Today, it gets around 2 million visitors annually. And the region, the estimates are, generates something like a quarter of Mexico's entire tourism income. The government's gamble paid off massively in economic terms.
And the city itself, the part where the workers live, that grew just as fast, right?
Absolutely. The population on the mainland side, not the hotel zone, went from maybe 120,000 in the late 80s to pushing 750,000 by 2015. A huge support city essentially built overnight to service the tourist strip.
But that kind of explosive, maybe uncontrolled growth, it always comes with a cost, doesn't it? Environmental, social.
It absolutely does, and that's something the informed traveler really needs to be aware of. This paradise they built is quite fragile.
Let's talk about that strain on infrastructure. You've got millions of people concentrated on what's essentially a narrow barrier island and mangrove system.
Right. That system wasn't designed for this level of pressure. It was carved out of a swamp, remember. The biggest single issue highlighted in the sources is water pollution.
How bad is it?
Well, consider this. Hotel wastewater makes up about 95% of all the sewage generated in the area. The local treatment plants, which were built fast, often get completely overwhelmed, especially during peak tourist season.
When they're overwhelmed.
The consequence is pretty devastating. Untreated or poorly treated, sewage flows out and threatens the aquatic ecosystems. That includes the very coral reefs that people travel there to see.
The irony's stark. Untreated waste damaging the main attraction.
It really is. And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
You've got enormous amounts of garbage being generated, some ending up in illegal dumps, and then there's beach erosion.
Caused by the building.
Partly, yes. All the construction on that fragile barrier island, plus just the constant human presence, it severely messes up the natural flow of sand.
Yeah.
They have to undertake these massive, expensive beach replenishment projects all the time just to keep the beaches looking like the postcards.
And socially.
Yeah.
You mentioned this divide between the tourist bubble and the local population.
It's intense. When you have, 73% of the entire state's GDP tied directly to tourism, that concentration creates huge pressure. Yes, it provides jobs, lots of them. But
it dries up costs.
Exactly, especially land prices and rent. What happens is the people working in the hotels, the waiters, the cleaners, the drivers, the people who make the tourism machine run, they often can't afford to live anywhere near the hotel zone where they work.
So they're pushed out.
Further and further out, yeah, to the outskirts of Cancun City. It often means these incredibly long commutes, sometimes 2 or 3 hours round trip, every single day, just to get to their jobs serving tourists in luxury resorts.
That creates a huge gap, a real economic and social divide.
It does. You have this precarious quality of life for many tourism workers, worsened by housing costs and commute times, right alongside this environment of extreme wealth and consumption. And that underlying tension, that friction, it sets the stage perfectly for the next big practical challenge for visitors, navigating the money maze.
Okay, let's shift gears then. Money. This seems to be the #1 thing people ask about online, and it sounds like a place where you can easily leak money if you're not careful.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably the most critical piece of practical advice. The core message is use Mexican pesos whenever you can. Overwhelmingly.
But U.S. dollars are accepted everywhere, right?
Yeah.
In tourist zones.
They are. Widely accepted. But that acceptance is the trap. Relying on dollars is basically a system designed to take a little extra slice of your cash with almost every transaction.
How does that work? What's the mechanism?
It's simple but incredibly effective. It's the unregulated exchange rate scam.
Unregulated. Meaning businesses can just make up their own rate.
Precisely. Because Quintana Roo is so uniquely dependent on tourism dollars, the exchange rates aren't controlled like they are elsewhere. So businesses and the sources point fingers specifically at hotels, bars, restaurants, and maybe worst of all, taxi drivers. They are completely free to set their own peso to dollar exchange rate.
And guess which way they set it?
Always in their favor, significantly lower than the actual bank rate you'd get from an ATM.
Okay, walk us through an example. Let's use that 18 pesos to the dollar bank rate you mentioned.
Right, so the official rate is 18-1. You go into a typical beach bar, order 5 beers. Let's say they're 30 pesos each, so that's 150 pesos total. You ask to pay in dollars. The barman says, sure, our rate is 15 pesos to the dollar. So 150 pesos divided by 15. You pay $10 US.
Seems straightforward, but what's the catch?
The catch is that $10 US, if you had gotten it exchanged properly at the 18.1 rate, is actually worth 180 pesos.
Ah, So the bar just made an extra 30 pesos on that transaction.
Exactly, for doing absolutely nothing except offering you their terrible in-house rate. That 30 pesos is basically the price of another beer that you didn't get.
And if you do that multiple times a day, every day of your trip.
It adds up incredibly fast. You could easily lose 10, maybe even 20% of your total spending energy just to these bad exchange rates without even realizing it sometimes.
And it's probably worse for smaller purchases, right? Like a bus ticket or water.
Oh yeah, definitely. Think about small things priced in pesos like the local bus fare, maybe 13 pesos, or a bottle of water, cigarettes. You try to pay with a US dollar bill, which is worth, say, 18 pesos or more. Either they round the price up significantly in dollars, or more likely, they give you change back in pesos but calculated at their awful 15.1 rate. Or sometimes they just shrug and say they don't have the right change for your large bill, meaning your dollar. Either way, you lose out.
Are there other issues with using US dollars? Like practical limitations?
There are. Many larger stores, even big supermarkets like the Walmart downtown, often won't accept $100 US bills at all. It's just too much hassle for them, maybe risk of counterfeits.
Okay.
And even with smaller bills, say a $50, shops often have rules, like your purchase has to be 80 or 90% of the bill's value. You can't just buy a $4 water and expect $46 back in pesos from a 50. They just won't do it.
That actually connects to something else mentioned in the sources, this weird rumor, especially aimed at UK tourists.
Ah, yes, the misinformation campaign.
Right.
Some travelers, particularly from the UK, get told by their travel agents that US dollars are no longer accepted in Cancun.
Which is just false.
Completely false. Dollars are accepted everywhere in the tourist areas. But certain large tour operators seem to perpetuate this lie.
Why would they do that?
It seems to boil down to banking complexity. Apparently, strict Mexican banking regulations make it really difficult and time-consuming for large companies to deposit huge amounts of U.S. cash. So the agents tell tourists dollars aren't accepted.
Forcing them to bring other currencies or, more likely, use credit cards or buy the operator's own overpriced tours and excursions, which are easily banked.
Exactly. It minimizes the currency hassle for the big operators at the tourists' expense and confusion.
Okay, let's put costs in perspective. Is Cancun a cheap getaway? If someone's thinking, say, Southeast Asia budget levels.
They need to adjust their expectations significantly, especially in the hotel zone. You should budget as if you're visiting a major expensive U.S. city. Think New York prices, maybe Miami prices. It is definitely not a cheap destination in that main tourist strip.
But cheaper outside the hotel zone.
Oh, significantly. Once you go downtown or explore other towns in the Riviera Maya, prices for food, drinks, local transport drop substantially. And often the quality, especially for food, is much better. That's a huge incentive to actually leave the resort.
Can you give us some ballpark figures? Like, what does a beer cost on the beach versus maybe a meal?
Sure. On the beach in the hotel zone, expect a standard beer to be anywhere from $5 to $7 U.S. cocktails. Easily $7 to $10, maybe more. If you venture out for street food, like tacos downtown, maybe $5 gets you a decent serving. But a sit-down dinner in a mid-range restaurant in the hotel zone, you could easily be looking at $50 U.S. per person.
And accommodation. Big range there, obviously.
Huge range. At the very budget end, think hostels or basic hotels downtown, you might find something around 15 to 18 euros per person per night. Mid-range hotels, maybe closer to 31. And then the all-inclusive resorts, the big players, those typically start around 70 euro per person per night and go way up from there.
So the big takeaway on money is plan carefully, know it's not cheap Mexico in the tourist heartland, and for the love of your wallet, use pesos.
That's the core message. Get pesos. Your first stop after clearing immigration should ideally be a reputable bank ATM to withdraw local currency. Avoid the airport exchange kiosks like the plague. Their rates are usually terrible too.
Right. Okay, moving on to logistics. You've landed at Cancun International, CUN. Getting from the airport to your hotel is that first hurdle. What are the options and what are the pros and cons?
This first choice is pretty critical for setting the tone, cost-wise and stress-wise. Let's break down the main ways out of the airport.
What's the cheapest?
The ABO bus service, it's reliable, runs 24/7, and it's definitely the most economical option if, and this is a big if, you're staying in downtown Cancun city center.
Why the F?
Because if you're staying anywhere along that long stretch of the hotel zone, the ADO bus is super impractical. It only makes one main stop, usually at a commercial plaza, which could still be miles away from your actual resort. You'd need another taxi from there anyway.
Okay, so 80 is good for downtown, bad for the hotel zone. What about taxis? We already flagged them for the currency issue.
Taxis from the airport, honestly, they're the least recommended option overall, period. They don't operate with any official visible price list. They charge these high, flat rates that they basically make up on the spot.
What kind of rates are we talking?
The standard unofficial rate from the airport to somewhere mid-hotel zone is often quoted around 650 pesos, maybe 25-30 US, but drivers frequently try to push for more, especially if you look unsure or just arrived. It's just an aggressive, expensive way to start your vacation.
What about ride sharing? Uber is usually cheaper. Does it work well there?
Uber is generally cheaper, yes. Maybe around 250 pesos, so like 10-12 US for that same airport trip. And using it within the city is usually fine. Safer too because the fare is tracked in the app.
There's always a but.
The but is the airport pickup, and sometimes pickups in high-traffic tourist spots. Uber drivers face major conflict, sometimes even physical threats, from the established, powerful local taxi unions. They guard their airport turf very aggressively.
So an Uber driver might just not show up or cancel.
Exactly. Or they might ask you to walk quite a distance away from the main arrivals area to a less conspicuous spot, which isn't ideal with luggage after a long flight. Availability can be spotty right at the airport because of this friction.
So if ADO isn't practical for the hotel zone, and airport taxis are expensive and potentially stressful, and Uber is tricky, what's the recommended solution?
For getting to the hotel zone reliably and without hassle, pre-booked transfers are the way to go. Either a private car or a shared shuttle van.
Are they expensive?
Surprisingly affordable, actually. You can often book a shared shuttle online in advance for around 110 pesos. That's less than $5 or maybe $6 US per person. They drop you right at your hotel lobby. It completely removes the negotiation, the currency games, the potential conflict. Just book it before you fly.
Okay, that seems like solid advice for the arrival. Now, what about getting around during the trip? For the traveler who wants to explore beyond their resort, see those cenotes, visit Tulum or Coba, renting a car seems appealing.
It offers the ultimate flexibility, no doubt. A rental car lets you get to those unique spots that the big tour buses often miss. Less crowded cenotes, maybe some remote beaches, hitting the major ruins like Chichen Itza or Coba on your own timetable.
And cost-wise, compared to taxis or tours all the time.
If you plan on moving around a lot, exploring different towns, visiting multiple sites, then yes, renting a car can definitely be more economical than paying for taxis or organized tours every single day.
But the sources sounded pretty cautious about renting. Scams seem common.
Very common. This is an area where you need your guard up. First rule: only rent from a well-known, reputable international agency or a highly recommended local one. Avoid the tiny, no-name outfits offering suspiciously low prices.
What's a typical scam?
The classic bait and switch on insurance. You book online, see a great rate, like $20 a day. You show up, and suddenly they insist you must take their mandatory liability insurance, which wasn't clearly included, and it doubles or triples the daily cost.
Can you decline that insurance if you have your own?
Often, they make it incredibly difficult or just refuse, insisting Mexican law requires their specific insurance. You need to clarify the total all-in price, including all mandatory insurance, before you sign anything. And expect a hefty deposit hold on your credit card, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of dollars.
Any other rental tips?
Absolutely crucial. Document the car's condition meticulously. Before you drive away, take photos or video of everything. Every scratch, dent, mark on the tires, inside and out. Do the same when you return it. This protects you from bogus damage claims later.
Okay, so navigate the rental agency carefully. What about actually driving there? Are the roads okay?
The main highways, like the toll road between Cancun and Tulum, are generally in good condition, well maintained. The big warning from the sources concerns driving between cities or towns, especially after dark.
Strongly discouraged, right? Why?
Multiple reasons. One, poor lighting on many secondary roads once you leave the main tourist corridor. Two, the risk of animals suddenly crossing the road, cows, dogs, other wildlife. But the biggest, most notorious hazard is the speed bumps. The topes.
Ah, tokes. We need to explain these. They're not the gentle yellow plastic things we have in parking lots.
Not even close. A tope in Mexico is typically this massive, steep, often unpainted and unsignaled ridge of concrete or asphalt built right across the road, usually at the entrance and exit of every single village.
Designed to force you to a near stop.
Exactly. And if you're driving at night on an unlit road and you don't see one coming, hitting a tope at speed can cause serious damage to your rental car. We're talking blown tires, bent axles, busted suspension. They are a major, major hazard, especially at night.
So the advice is basically stick to daytime driving for longer distances.
That's the strong recommendation, yes. For safety and to avoid potentially costly damage to the car.
What documents do you need to rent a car there? Is an international driving permit required?
Generally, for tourists from places like the US, Canada, or Europe, your valid home country driver's license is sufficient. An IDP isn't usually legally required for short tourist rentals, though having one might occasionally help bridge a language barrier if you get stopped. You'll also need your passport, of course, and almost always a major credit card.
Why the credit card specifically?
It's for that large security deposit hold we talked about. Some agencies might accept a debit card or even cash, but they'll typically require a much higher deposit in that case, sometimes thousands of dollars, which most people don't carry or want tied up. So a credit card is practically essential.
Okay, this feels like a natural transition into the really serious topic, safety and security. It's vital people understand the real risks in Quintana Roo, beyond just the driving hazards or rental scams.
Absolutely. And it's important to approach this realistically without unnecessary fear, but also without minimizing the warnings that are out there. The resorts often paint a picture of perfect safety, but the reality is more complex.
Let's start with the official advisory level. What does the U.S. State Department say?
They currently have Mexico overall at a level 2 advisory, which means exercise increased caution. Importantly, that same level 2 advisory applies specifically to the state of Quintana Roo, where Cancun and the Riviera Maya are located.
And the reason cited.
Primarily crime and the risk of violence associated with criminal organizations, including cartels.
Is this just like general crime or something more specific tourists should know about?
The advisory gets specific. It warns that violent incidents, including shootings between rival criminal groups often fighting over territory for drug sales, have occurred in popular tourist areas. And tragically, innocent bystanders, including tourists, have been injured or even killed in these incidents.
Even in places like Playa del Carmen or near hotels.
Yes, unfortunately. These incidents have happened in areas frequented by tourists. It highlights why the advisory recommends specific precautions, like avoiding travel between cities after dark and, crucially, never hailing taxis on the streets. Stick to regulated options.
Let's look at the crime statistics for the area. You mentioned data for the first half of 2025. What does it show?
The numbers give a clearer picture of everyday risks. In just the first 6 months of 2025, Quintana Roo recorded over 27,000 common crimes.
What were the most frequent types?
Number 1 was robbery, with over 5,700 cases. This includes various types of robbery of pedestrians, businesses, and notably motorcycle-related robberies, which often involve snatch and grabs.
Okay, what else?
Second highest was domestic violence, with almost 3,700 reported cases. Third was assault or injury, with over 2,500 cases. These high numbers reflect some of that underlying social tension and economic disparity we discussed earlier.
Is there anything in the data that points to more organized, serious crime trends affecting the state?
Yes, and it's quite disturbing. According to the data for that period, Quintana Roo ranked number 1 nationally in Mexico for reported cases of human trafficking, with 71 cases in just those 6 months.
Number 1 in the country. That's shocking.
It is. It points to a deep-rooted problem of exploitation, likely fueled by the constant flow of tourists and vulnerable workers drawn to the region's economy. It's a stark reminder of the darker side that exists alongside the resorts.
So it's not just about drug violence, but other forms of organized exploitation too.
Exactly. It's a complex criminal ecosystem. However, it's also worth noting, on a slightly different track, that intentional homicide rates in the state actually saw a significant decrease during that same period, down over 50%. Quintana Roo ranked 19th nationally for homicide.
Interesting. So maybe less overt lethal violence between groups, but still high levels of robbery and this deeply concerning trafficking issue.
That seems to be what the recent data suggests, a shift perhaps towards more economically motivated crime and control rather than just high-profile shootouts, though those still occur.
Okay, let's focus on the dangers tourists are most likely to encounter directly. Petty theft, robbery, the roderos, as they're sometimes called.
Yes, the risk of petty theft and opportunistic robbery is definitely elevated, especially in crowded places. Downtown Cancun, busy markets, on public buses, even on the beaches sometimes.
So standard precautions apply. Don't flash cash. Leave expensive jewelry at home.
Absolutely. Don't make yourself an obvious target. Avoid wearing flashy watches or expensive jewelry. Be discreet with your money and phone. And pay attention to descriptions you see in online forums. There are recurring reports about specific methods.
Like what?
One common warning is about muggers operating as a pair, typically 2 individuals on a small motorcycle, often wearing black, full-face helmets. They specialize in quick snatch-and-grab robberies of phones, bags, or necklaces. If you see that setup, be extra vigilant.
We keep coming back to taxis. You said never hail one on the street. Why is that so critical from a safety perspective beyond just getting ripped off?
Because hailing an unknown, unregistered taxi off the street is where some of the most serious incidents happen. Tourists have reported being victims of express kidnappings, armed robbery, and extreme extortion attempts originating from street-hailed taxis.
Can you give an example?
There was one widely reported account of a tourist being taken for a short ride, then threatened and ultimately forced to pay $1,000 US. These aren't common, but they happen, and they almost always start with getting into an unofficial cab.
So the rule is absolute. Only use official taxi stands, sitios, pre-booked authorized cars, or recognized rideshare apps within city limits.
Absolutely. No exceptions. It's a fundamental safety rule for the region.
What about the nightlife scene in the presence of drugs? Sources mention it's quite open.
It is a noticeable aspect of the nightlife, particularly in clubs and bars in the hotel zone and Playa del Carmen. Visitors often report being openly offered various substances, usually in the bathrooms.
Is there a specific warning related to this, beyond the obvious legal risks?
Yes, a very specific one rooted in how the local drug trade is organized by cartels. The strong advice is, do not bring any substances into a venue that you didn't purchase locally right there.
Why is that?
Because different criminal groups control different territories, and they apparently use distinct packaging for their products as a sort of identifier. If you're caught inside a club with drugs in packaging associated with a rival group, that's seen as a serious transgression of their territorial rules.
So the packaging itself is like a territorial marker.
That's the reported dynamic. It shows how structured and controlled that environment is, even illicitly. Violating those unwritten rules can lead to serious trouble, far beyond just getting kicked out by security.
That's a chilling detail. There's one other specific threat mentioned. Virtual kidnapping or extortion targeting hotel guests. How does that work?
It's a particularly nasty scam that plays on fear and isolation. Criminals will call a guest's hotel room phone hatter. They often just dial random room numbers. The guest picks up, maybe thinking it's the front desk.
And then what?
The caller immediately creates panic. They might use loud noises, aggressive language, claim to be from a cartel, and insist the guest is being watched or is in immediate danger. Or they'll claim they've kidnapped a family member who is traveling with the guest.
But the family member is actually fine.
Usually, yes. The goal is to isolate the victim psychologically. They'll tell the guest not to hang up, to go to a certain part of the hotel, maybe lock themselves in the bathroom, and crucially, to turn off their cell phone. This prevents the guest from verifying the threat or contacting the supposedly kidnapped loved one.
And then they demand money?
Exactly. They demand an immediate wire transfer, usually Western Union or something similar, playing on the manufactured urgency and fear. Because the victim's phone is off, they can't call their spouse or friend to check if they're okay.
That sounds terrifying. What's the defense against that?
The advice is clear. If you receive any threatening call like this in your hotel room, hang up immediately. Do not engage. Do not provide any personal information. Then, calmly and discreetly report the call to hotel security or the front desk management. Never let them isolate you or pressure you into sending money.
It's heavy stuff, but knowing these tactics exist is the first step to avoiding them. Okay, let's try to shift focus a bit. People go there for a vacation after all. Let's talk about choosing where to base yourself. Cancun versus the wider Riviera Maya. They offer different vibes, right?
Completely different experiences, even though they're geographically close. Cancun is really defined by its hotel zone, that long, narrow island strip packed with large, modern, often all-inclusive resorts. It's geared towards maximum convenience, predictable amenities, and a very high-energy, often party-centric atmosphere. It's largely a manufactured environment.
And the Riviera Maya.
That stretches south from Cancun's outskirts, past towns like Puerto Morelos, Playa del Carmen, Akumal, down towards Tulum, and even further to Punta Allen. It generally feels more spread out, less intensely developed in parts.
What kind of traveler does the Riviera Maya appeal to?
Often people looking for something a bit more, maybe authentic isn't quite the right word, but perhaps more immersive or relaxed. You find smaller towns, boutique hotels, lots of vacation rentals like Airbnbs, especially in Playa and Tulum. It blends access to natural attractions, cenotes, beaches, ruins with a slightly more bohemian or laid-back vibe compared to the intensity of the Cancun hotel zone.
Let's talk highlights. Regardless of where you stay, what are the absolute must-do attractions in the region?
Well, beyond the beautiful beaches themselves, the area is world famous for its large eco-adventure parks. The big player is the Xcaret Group.
Xcaret, Explore, Selha, those ones.
Exactly. Xcaret Park itself is massive, focused on Mexican culture, wildlife, and has this really spectacular evening show. Explore is all about adventure zip lines, underground rivers, amphibious vehicles. Ixtla is like a huge natural aquarium, great for snorkeling in a contained environment.
Are they worth the price? They
Yeah.
seem expensive.
They are expensive.
Mm.
You're looking at entry fees often ranging from 2,000 to 3,000 Mexican pesos per person. That's easily over $100, sometimes closer to 150 US just for a day ticket. So they're not budget activities, but they are full-day, highly produced experiences.
Okay, good to know. What about the Mayan ruins?
Absolutely essential. You have two main choices that represent different scales and experiences.
Chichen Itza being the big one.
The biggest. It's one of the new seven wonders of the world, truly monumental. It's about a 2.5-hour drive inland from Cancun. The downside, it gets incredibly crowded, especially midday when all the tour buses arrive.
What's the alternative?
Tulum. The Tulum ruins are smaller historically, but their location is absolutely stunning, perched on cliffs overlooking the turquoise Caribbean Sea. It's much closer, especially if you're staying in the southern Riviera Maya, making it an easier half-day trip. Very iconic photos.
And islands? People love island day trips.
Two main ones. Isla Mujeres is just a short ferry ride from Cancun, about 6 kilometers offshore. It's famous for snorkeling, a laid-back vibe, renting golf carts to explore, and the MUSA Underwater Sculpture Museum.
And the other?
Cozumel. It's a larger island reached by ferry from Playa del Carmen. Cozumel is world-renowned for diving and snorkeling. It sits right along the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef, the second largest reef system in the world, offering incredible marine life and visibility. Definitely worth it if you're into underwater activities.
Now, for the traveler really wanting to escape the tourist track, save money, and find that real Mexico feel,
Yeah.
is downtown Cancun the answer?
It definitely offers a different perspective. Visually, downtown Cancun isn't as polished or appealing as the hotel zone, let's be honest. But yes, it's substantially cheaper for food, drinks, and basic accommodation. And it's where you find genuine local life.
Are there specific areas downtown worth checking out?
Yeah, sources often recommend what they call the Magic Triangle. That's centered around Parque de las Palapas, a big public square that comes alive at night with food stalls, music, and local families hanging out. Then there's Mercado 28, a large handicraft market, also with lots of cheap, authentic food stalls. And finally, the main ADO bus station, which is your hub for affordable travel to anywhere else on the peninsula.
And Playa del Carmen. You mentioned it offers a middle ground.
Playa del Carmen, or just Playa, often strikes a good balance for many people. It's more developed and tourist-oriented than downtown Cancun, but less overwhelmingly resort-focused than the Cancun hotel zone. It's got a vibrant pedestrian street, Fifth Avenue, Quinta Avenida, lined with shops, bars, and restaurants, good nightlife. Plus, lots of modern condo rentals and Airbnbs, and critically, it's the departure point for the Cozumel ferry.
So a good base for exploring the Riviera Maya.
Yeah, it's often recommended for that reason. You get decent amenities and nightlife, but you're well-positioned to visit Tulum, cenotes, Cozumel without being locked into an all-inclusive resort if that's not your style.
Okay, final stretch. Let's nail down the essential prep checklist. The stuff you absolutely need to sort out before you go to avoid major hassles, health and legal stuff.
Right. Boring but crucial. Top of the list, travel insurance. Do not leave home without it.
Why is it so critical there?
Because, as mentioned, healthcare for tourists operates on a private pay-for system. Hospitals are good, but they are expensive. They will demand payment up front, either from your insurer directly or a large deposit from you before providing significant treatment, sometimes even before discharging you. You cannot rely on any public system. Comprehensive travel medical insurance is non-negotiable.
What about vaccines? Anything mandatory?
No vaccines are strictly mandatory just for entering the Cancun Riviera Maya tourist areas. However, standard travel health recommendations often include hepatitis A and B, tetanus diphtheria booster, and possibly typhoid, especially if you plan to venture into more rural areas or eat adventurously from street stalls. Best to consult your doctor based on your plans.
Food and water safety. We touched on it, but let's reiterate.
Simple rules, huge impact. Only drink bottled water, period. Use it for brushing your teeth, too. Be cautious with uncooked food, especially early in your trip, to avoid traveler's diarrhea. Wash any fruit or vegetables you buy from markets very thoroughly with purified water or a special disinfectant solution. If eating street food, look for busy stalls where food is cooked fresh and served piping hot.
Okay, now the big legal red flags. What should people absolutely not bring into Mexico?
This catches so many people out. Number one, E-cigarettes and vaping devices. There is a strict total ban on the importation of all vaping products into Mexico. Customs will confiscate them. Don't try to hide them.
Even if they're for personal use. No nicotine.
Doesn't matter. The ban covers the devices themselves. Attempting to argue can lead to significant fines or worse. Just leave them at home. Also, obviously, any illegal drugs are strictly prohibited. And critically, this includes marijuana. Even if you have a medical prescription from your home country, Mexico does not recognize foreign medical marijuana prescriptions.
Good to know. What about checkpoints? You mentioned legal and potentially illegal ones.
Yes, you should expect to encounter checkpoints on the roads, especially outside the main tourist zones. These can be official, military, or police checkpoints, which are routine. However, travelers sometimes report encountering unofficial, potentially criminal checkpoints as well.
What's the procedure if stopped?
The advice is unwavering. Comply immediately and calmly. Do not argue. Do not try to drive away or ignore instructions. Whether it's official or unofficial, non-compliance can escalate dangerously and potentially lead to violence. Just cooperate politely.
And finally, customs declarations when arriving at the airport. Anything specific to watch out for?
There are standard duty-free limits. You need to declare goods if their value exceeds 500 US per person when arriving by air, or 300 US if arriving by land. The one that often trips people up is electronics.
How so?
Mexican customs regulations technically only allow one portable computer defined as a laptop or tablet per person, tax-free. If you're carrying, say, both a personal laptop and a work laptop, or a laptop and an iPad, they could potentially decide to tax the second item.
Sure.
It doesn't always happen. Enforcement can be inconsistent, but it's the rule. If they choose to apply it, the tax can be significant, up to 19% of the item's value. So just be aware if you travel heavy on electronics.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. From that swampy origin story and the calculated rise at Cancun, right through to the nitty-gritty of peso scams, topes, and security alerts. Let's try to boil down the absolute key takeaways for someone listening.
All right, the action list. Number 1, financially. Pesos win. Get pesos from a reputable ATM as soon as possible. Avoid paying in dollars, especially at bars, restaurants, and taxis, to dodge that unofficial tourist tax via bad exchange rates. It's the easiest money you'll save.
Got it. Logistics.
For arrival, ditch the airport stress. Pre-book a shared or private transfer online before you fly, particularly for the hotel zone. It's reliable and often cheaper than the hassle of airport taxis or unpredictable Uber pickups.
And if renting a car?
Rent from a major agency. Clarify all insurance costs up front. Meticulously photograph the car before and after. And please avoid driving between towns after dark because of those hidden concrete topes. Stick to daytime for exploration drives. And overarching everything, awareness is key. Know you're in a level 2 advisory area. Use common sense street smarts. Never hail a street taxi. Be vigilant against pickpockets and snatch and grabs, especially the motorcycle duos. And maybe try to look beyond the resort walls to understand the context a bit better.
We've really charted this incredible story. The furniture strategic gamble, creating a global destination, bringing in billions.
Yeah.
But we've also seen the undeniable costs. The environmental strain, the water pollution, the beach erosion, and that deep social friction, the displacement of the very people who make the tourist experience possible.
Yeah, knowing this stuff gives you power as a traveler, but maybe also a bit of responsibility, right, to the place you're visiting.
So that brings us to our final thought for you, the listener, the informed traveler we hope you'll be. As you spend your money there, contributing to this massive tourism engine, maybe think about how and where you spend it.
Could your choices help, even in a small way, mitigate some of those negative impacts?
Maybe instead of only using international chains for everything, could you seek out locally owned restaurants like the ones in Parque del Palapas, or buy souvenirs directly from artisans at Mercado 28? Support local tour operators who have a good reputation.
It's about asking, how do my choices affect the long-term health of this place, environmentally and socially? How can we help ensure this paradise, or at least the beautiful Yucatan it's part of, actually endures for future generations, not just future tourists?
Something to think about as you plan your trip.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the real calculations behind Cancun.
Until next time, travel safely, travel informed.